Thanks for joining us on Facebook Live. Today is July 21, 2020, and it's a hot day here in Daytona Beach, Florida. I am glad that you're joining us. We hope that you are safe through COVID, and we are here at our church. I've got Ida Babazada with Advent Health Daytona Beach helping, and our Pastor Travis Walker with our Daytona Beach Seventh-day Adventist Church here. So they're supporting me on this, our first Health Ministries live online session. So everybody is going to be on mute while I go through our presentation, but you have the opportunity to communicate via chat, and questions, technical issues, comments, those you can put in there, and both Ida and Travis will be monitoring these. As I go through sharing slides, if there's a slide you like, take a picture of it. We are recording this through Facebook, so if you didn't get a chance to watch it all live, you can catch it as a rerun. So I do want to thank Ida Babazada. She's our Daytona Adventist Health Daytona Beach Community Outreach representative who helps plan things like this within the community and help with community wellness needs. And Travis, he does a great job as pastor and helping with being our technical support here. So I will try to have time at the end of the presentation to address any questions you might have sent in the chat. And if we don't get to all of them today, we are planning a follow-up session next Tuesday at 4 p.m. to 5 as a follow-up, talking about what you learned, how it's working for you, what barriers are, answering questions. So I hope that you may have taken the pre-assessment quiz about nutrition. We got a few of them back. If you still have an opportunity to click the link at some point, take it, because those assessment statements are a real helpful way to identify where you are in your nutrition practice. And it also gives you a good indication of what are healthy nutrition habits based on the questions asked. So I hope you're comfortable. We're comfortable here. We do have the air conditioning turned down, and I've got a water bottle. So I am going to start by sharing my screen and going now into my slides. And that'll just take a second here. All right, so this is our Collaborating for Health. We're very fortunate to have our Daytona Beach Advent Health Hospital literally down the street, down the same street as our Daytona Beach Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we really enjoy collaborating with Ida, Travis, and I, and other professionals, and help to put on community wellness programs either at our church or at the hospital. So I am a registered dietitian, but I'm also a real person living in the community in Ormond Beach. I really like this Volusia County location. It's such an amazing community here. I am a full-time domestic executive. I have worked for a lot of years, all of them in healthcare as a dietitian, either in clinical dietitian or as food service management. And I did get to spend the last 6 years of my work career working at Advent Health Daytona Beach, formerly known as Florida Hospital Memorial Medical Center. So I already knew and loved this hospital, and then I happened to be able to move up into the area and continue to work in a new way as a volunteer for the hospital. And then as a member of our church, I'm the health ministries leader and work with our pastor and our team here to do things for our members and community. I have a great family, 2 kids, my husband, Ed, our dear dog, Jack, I've got Jason and Janelle, my son and daughter, and their spouses. So we are blessed to be near them in the community. So what are we covering today? I really want to set the stage by promoting whole person health and wellness. We're going to look at the links between lifestyle, diet, and disease because they are closely linked. There are some amazing advantages to being on a whole food, plant-based diet, and we want to take advantage of those things. You are going to learn about the list of things that you can maximize in your diet for your health. There are things to be moderate with, minimize, and eliminate if it's possible to have optimum health. I am putting a disclaimer in there that, this information this presentation is educational and general in nature. And I am not the information, nor I am a substitute for medical diagnosis, counseling, treatment. So make sure you get help by a qualified health professional, and hopefully this information does assist you in your health. So there we go. So whole person health. I really can't talk about nutrition only because as a person, we are more than just our physical body. We are a combination of mind, body, spirit. Our Advent Health Daytona Beach, that's the foundation of their wellness and health approach, as is our church health ministries. So we do believe that our bodies are the temple of God, therefore we need to look after them. And we want to share the best knowledge for the healthiest life. I don't want to just give you average knowledge. If I just give you average knowledge, then it doesn't give you the real opportunity to take the best advantage of what's out there. So by doing that, we want to prevent disease and not just treat disease. So prevention is powerful. Now, all of us are at a different readiness for change. I recognize that. Sometimes when we were doing face-to-face conference room presentations, we'd have couples come in and one of them may have been really interested to be there, and the other spouse or partner or friend might have been their driver or companion, and at a different place mentally where they want to be. So some people are just not ready to change. Other people are, well, I'll listen. I think the fact that you are doing this online and dropping in, I know somewhere you are on this, and I hope that it helps you go from where you're at to a new way of thinking, and therefore a new way of acting. What's really important is to answer the question, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you interested in this? And when you know your why, you do address the tougher days in a better way because you know why you're doing it. Yeah, you have tough days, but if your why is big enough, you'll get through them. So there's going to be a lot of information and a lot of things that you see on the list, the handout. Some of them are going to come easy to you. You may be doing them already. Some of them are going to be, what? Oh man, that's on the minimize or eliminate list, and that's something I really am attached to. Well, we can feel like we can't, but then, we may be able to continue to think and access our mental and spiritual side to change our can't into I can. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Whole person health, because we just can't sometimes do things on our own. And by looking outside of ourselves and seeking into a spiritual well, we can find the help that we need. So the help that we need is great because the fact is that God created us. This is the belief that we're coming from. And he came so that we can have life and have it abundantly. If he's the creator, he's like the manufacturer. How many of us have things that we buy, like a car? You buy a car and there's a manufacturer warranty on it. And you know, if you don't put the right gas and oil and other things in it, you will void the warranty. It's kind of like that with creation. He created us, he's given us information on how to live, and he wants us to live in a way that we can have life and have it abundantly. So at Advent Health, we do have a set of 8 principles that we have coined the word creation. So creation are 8 health principles: choice, rest, environment, activity, trust, interpersonal relationships, outlook, and nutrition. I really like this acronym because the first letter is C, choice. Everything is a choice. Everything that we do happens first in our head. It's a mental processing, and we choose everything. And of course, I'm attached to the last letter too, and everyone in between. So we really today, every slide, you're going to see that choice is involved. I hope you believe that health is a treasure. I know as we age, and I'm aging, everybody's aging. Some people, children are happy to get older. You know, we get older and we're happy to not get older, but it becomes more clear that health is a treasure. Of all the temporal or worldly possessions, it is more precious than it's the most precious. If we don't have health, what does wealth, learning, honor really mean if we can't have health to enjoy those? So none of those things are going to be possible if health isn't there. So let's treat it as a treasure. So here's some facts. At least 70% of all deaths are due to chronic diseases of our own making. I do like to refer to those diseases of affluence, diseases of, we have the ability to buy things that are so manufactured, so processed, that years ago they couldn't purchase easily because sugar cost too much, and only the rich people had those kinds of things, and the less wealthy dealt with more farm type food right out of the ground. 90% of type 2 diabetes, 80 to 90% of heart disease, and 40 to 70% of cancers are considered entirely preventable. This is an amazing fact. So if they're preventable, this is bad. These statistics are bad news, but yet on the other hand, there is a lot of hope there that they can be preventable. They can be reversible. Diseases of lifestyle, these are diseases of lifestyle largely, and they can be reversed and prevented. So take a look at this picture and pick out the 4 lifestyle culprits that you see. All right, so we see that there is a big plate of processed food. So our diet, the SAD diet. How many of us sitting there on a couch like a couch potato, so being sedentary? How about alcohol, the beer? And then the fact that there's obesity. Of the reasons why we have these lifestyle diseases that are so prevalent. Lifestyle practices, have you heard of the blue zone? The blue zone are areas where there's concentrations of centenarians in 6 different parts of the world. And these people all live to be 100 plus, many of them. They have high concentrations. And when they looked at what are the commonalities, they have family, they don't smoke, they're socially engaged, they do physical activity, they eat a lot of plant-based diets, and they all, in one form or another, include legumes. So these blue zones, there is one blue zone in North America, and that's the Loma Linda area, where there is a concentration of Centurion Seventh-day Adventists who practice the health message and the health health message of our church that has been part of our church's message, and ultimately as part of our healthcare message as well. So these things can be learned. They don't have, not all of us are born into one of these blue zones, but we can have a blue zone type life by making the right choices. So if you don't make time for health, you will make time for disease. So if we don't do the right things, eat the right things, exercise, make a lot of the right choices, we're going to end up having to suffer from lack of vigor, get sick, miss time from work, see doctors, go to the ED. One way or the other, we're going to be using time. So let's use it for health. So I'm trying to explain whole food, plant-based nutrition. So I love this saying, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. Literally every time we drink something or eat something, there is essentially an immediate impact on our body, an immediate impact on our biochemistry. It affects our whole internal mechanisms through our GI tract, our everything, our blood. It has that fast of an impact. We don't have to wait months. It happens that quickly. So if I put something unhealthy in my body, I get a quick a body response. If I put something healthy in my body, it's responding immediately to that. And that is really encouraging, because it actually means that we can make changes quickly and see results quickly. And that can be very encouraging. So what are whole food plant-based choices? How do they work? What makes it so good? Well, these four things are really what drive chronic disease, these diseases of lifestyle, which are diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and those account for the largest percentage of all these health problems and limitations and even deaths from these diseases. So inflammation is there's two types of inflammation. There's the type when you get like a bee sting and you get red and hot and pain, and that's an inflammation. But there's also the type of low-grade inflammation that is actually smoldering and burning inside of us, that it's oxidative stress, it's lipotoxicity. These things all are related, and they inflame the body. They stress the cells in the systems. They find our weak link. Genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So we all have weak links in our bodies, our systems. And, some families are genetically more prone to diabetes or cancer or some form of disease. They have that in their family, but that doesn't mean that they are automatically going to suffer and die from it, because these lifestyle diseases can be reversed and can be prevented. So whole food plant-based diets address these four drivers of chronic disease. So I mentioned the standard American diet. It is a sad threat to our life. And the more that we eat of those kinds of foods, the faster that ball rolls down the hill towards illness and disease. So, there's all types of addictions. We the standard American diet, the processed food diet, this kind of thing, it isn't that it doesn't taste good. It isn't that it doesn't satisfy. Yes, it does those things, but it is killing us while it's doing those. All right, trying to move forward on my slide. It's not moving forward. Just a moment, please. My slide isn't advancing. It's like my computer's locked up. All right, Travis is coming to see if he can figure out what's happened with my. Okay, here we go. Thank you. All right, we're back online. Thank you so much. So let me make sure. All right. So here's the fact. We can make choices. And every single day, multiple times during the day, we do get an opportunity to make choices. And there are multiple ways we can go. So I just want to try to visually help us slow down. And habits are choices that we have made so often and so much that it seems like they just happen automatically, but they are actually a form of choice. We've just, reduced the choice time down to millisecond because they're a habit. And what we need to do with some of our habits is kind of slow down, realize it's a choice, and try to spread the gap between where we have more time to think in this choice gap before we move forward into the sad American diet choices or into more of a whole food plant-based choice. Why is it doing that again? Well, just I know that we've got the slides have chosen not to advance again, so I don't understand. Is your computer working? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. So truth seeking. Here's some of the facts. What I'm trying to do today is tell you what I feel is truth as a registered dietitian, someone who's really put a lot of time professionally, education, as well as continuing education, that what is going to be the healthiest way to eat. So not everybody wants to hear this truth, or even the ones that do want to hear it may not make all the changes. But I think that everybody has a right to know what a properly selected whole food plant-based diet will do for them and how tasty, safe, and highly effective it is as a lifestyle option in helping to stay healthy and treat diseases. So we are all on a health spectrum of some sort. We are somewhere along here in our choices. And to show you a visual, when we have a very high animal-based processed diet consumption, we are going to have increased disease. It's like being in the red zone where there's a lot of inflammation, oxidative stress. There's a lot of disease that is going to develop there. The really encouraging things is the more whole food plant-based choices that you make, it moves you towards the green end of the continuum. And your body is an amazingly, fearfully and wonderfully made, as the Bible said. And it responds to the green zone, where you've got whole food, plant-based, which not only, if the more green you go, you can actually slow disease down in the yellow, moving from red to yellow, you can slow it down, or you can get to the point where your choices are facilitating disease reversal, prevention, and reversal. And there can be reversal to type 2 diabetes. There can be reversal of these lifestyle cardiac disease and cancers. The real encouraging news is one meal does make a difference. It really does. If you were to measure your blood sugars, measure those before, during, and after meals, you would see a difference in how plant-based eating versus standard American diet eating really changes how your body responds. The fact is, minimal changes get minimal results. Maximum changes get maximum results, and you get to choose where you want to be on that continuum. So what are the steps to this optimal diet? I have the handout. We're going to go through the items on the handout about what to maximize. These are dietary, nutrient-rich, whole food, plant-based choices. So nutrient-rich. What is moderate? We want to have moderate consumption of the high fat whole foods and portion control. We want to minimize the dangerous foods and beverage ingredients and eliminate them too. We may have to step down through minimize to eliminate for some of them. So let's start with the maximize. All right, the foundation of our choices are going to come from whole food, plant-based. I mean, this is a gorgeous picture. There are so many really, really wonderful plant foods that I can see immediately that I like, and I hope that you can see. There's a lot of food and a lot that there is to choose from. So we want to maximize whole food, whole vegetables. Whole or mechanically processed. And what I mean mechanically processed is I have diced tomatoes in my cupboard. I have chopped, or I may buy partially chopped items for convenience. Those things are mechanically processed. Eat as much of these as you like. Make sure you get plenty of raw as well as cooked. There is a real important thing to get green. That is a huge, huge benefit. The green color, green leafy. So lettuces, spinach, the cabbage, kale, those are very, very helpful. Broccoli. Cruciferous vegetables, those are things like the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale family. They're very powerful for nutrient density and so many processes in the body. Make sure you're eating a lot of color, the rainbow of color. You want to eat much color, but even white is a color, so cauliflower is good. Things that are raw vegetable or whole vegetables like that are extremely healthy, even though they're white. So certain things can be white and they're very healthy. So how about having a salad every day? Make it a good sized salad, get a good amount of raw vegetables in there. You're going to do a lot more chewing, but your body is going to get a lot of benefit. Now, I really don't recommend that we need juices. It depends on the person and the situation. I would suggest you eat the apple versus drink apple juice. Eat the orange versus orange juice. And depending on your situation, really would determine how much juice or no juice you would live with. So those are spices and nutraceuticals. Nutraceuticals are things that we eat that are very medicinal, potent medicinal. So things like garlic. Garlic is an amazing nutraceutical, powerful, flavorful seasoning, and it contributes a lot. And because it's so powerful, it gets the fancy name nutraceutical. Ginger is another example. Whole fruits, eat whole fruits. For people who have blood sugar problems or possibly overweight and obese, use the lower sugar choices. Berries, green apples, those would be really good. Fresh, raw. Avoid juices because liquid juice is almost like juice crack. It's so high in sugar, and yes, there may be some nutrients, but the overload of sugar may not be the best choice for many people based on their health condition. Color, you just emphasize color. Dark green, the color that you see here is medicinal. Why is it medicinal? Is because the color is the phytochemicals that are in these fruits and vegetables. And these phytochemicals are antioxidants which help reduce the internal inflammation, and they prevent our internal rust. And internal rust is, you can buy a brand new car, right? You drive it off the parking lot, and what is coming out of the tailpipe? You're going to have a bunch of exhaust still coming out of the tailpipe, which is waste. The car has to get rid of it. And it's like our bodies, just living day to day, even if we're healthy, we're producing a form of exhaust internally that our body has to get rid of. And phytonutrients, the antioxidants, they help the body to be able to eliminate waste and toxins. So the more color, the better. Beans and legumes, these are superfoods. Try to eat these daily. They need to be eaten daily. If I was going to make a recommendation of frequency, they're very nutrient dense. They're a great combination of fiber and complex carbohydrate, and they flavor, of course. They really are great for stabilizing blood sugar. And whenever you stabilize blood sugar, you're stabilizing insulin. And I could go on and on about insulin, but you want to stabilize it. You want to not have these sharp rises from the processed carbohydrates and sugars in the diet. These will help our body systems and help reduce our risk of disease. And remember, legumes and beans were something that were in all of the 6 blue zone groups. So eat up to 3 servings daily, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I eat a lot of beans, and portion size, a half a cup is considered a serving, but you can have up to a cup and a half a day. Tofu would be in there, nut butter. You can make some great dishes. There's so many great recipes out there. If you Google plant-based whole food recipes, you're going to get a lot of hits. So just to address this issue, beans are good for the heart. Yeah, we all know that. And yeah, it could be true, but if you start slowly, if you're not used to eating them, and increase the amount, if you cook them from scratch, soaking and changing the water, I recommend rinsing canned beans, the liquid off of them. The herbs like fennel and caraway, those things do help reduce the gas. And basically, there are ways to control our bubbles, and Beano is one of them. And I think it's the benefit of eating these things outweighs the bubble effect. And the more you eat of them, the less bubbles we produce, because we have converted our biome to have more of the good bugs that like this kind of food than the bad bugs that thrive on the sad American diet food. This is a really good little acronym that I think really is an easy way to remember. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. These are superfoods. Dr. Joel Fuhrman does a great job educating about these in his books and his approach. I like his GBOMS acronym. 100% whole grains. They aren't essential, but they're not the enemy. The intact, broken, or rolled grains are going to be the less processed ones to choose. Sprouted whole grains are great. And, you know, just look at the serving, where your health, where your weight is, where your blood sugar control is. If your weight is high, or if you're obese, or if you have type 2 diabetes, you might want to be more careful with this and watch them. But if you eat the 100% whole grains, they don't have the same level of blood sugar rise that processed whole grains like white bread and white flour products would. So carbohydrates do need to be selected carefully. The refined carbohydrates, the sugars, those are the ones that really impact your blood sugar right away. And you can eat a small amount or a serving of a concentrated sugar food, and within 15 minutes and 30, you start to see the impact on your blood sugar. If you were to do your finger pricks and check your blood sugar, it's going to just steadily rise. The complex refined carbohydrate are starches, and these are the white menace group, the white flour, the white rice. And these are they affect your blood sugar just like the refined carbohydrates very quickly. They may not taste as sweet to the tongue, but because they're refined, your body can digest them and the blood sugar just rises quickly. So what we want to recommend if you are going to have these carbohydrates are the unrefined, intact, whole form, broken, or rolled. And this is the hierarchy that maybe can help you understand. The intact would be like whole, farro, which are wheat berries, belt berries, quinoa, very popular, very tasty, sprouted grains. Bulgur, steel cut oats are cut and broken. And rolled oats, we all know the old fashioned rolled oats take longer to cook than the quick oats. So the further down you go, the less satisfying in some ways they are, the quicker they get digested and affect your blood sugar, which then starts you on a blood sugar up and down chasing, and which is not good for your body's chemistry. Fiber is our friend. Natural fiber. Fiber is found only in plant food. You do not get fiber from any animal food. So if you are needing fiber, you have to go to plants. So there's different kinds of fiber, different kinds, basically two groups: soluble fiber, so oat bran, barley, nuts, beans, some of the fruits are very high in soluble fiber, and the insoluble fiber is more of the whole grains, wheat bran, vegetables, and that kind of fiber is really good for bulking. And we want to have fiber au naturel. What do I mean by au naturel? How many of you have ever gone into your pharmacy area to look for what's down a lot of the aisle? There's this huge selection of fiber and laxatives, and basically here in America we don't move enough, and that's multiple ways we don't move enough. And when we get enough fiber in our diets, we're going to move, and we're going to move in a natural way. We shouldn't have to take a pill to move. Quality, we want to choose good quality food, as high a quality as we can afford. So where it makes sense to buy organic, let's do it. There are certain vegetables and fruits that are more dirty, meaning the chemicals that are used on them would be penetrating the skin and therefore be consumed by us if we're not careful. So you can look at what that list is. Fresh and raw, unprocessed. But you know what? There are times when we don't have access to fresh, raw, for one reason or another. So if you can't get fresh, can you get frozen? If you can't get frozen, what about things packaged in glass, plastic, or canned? If all you can get are canned vegetables or canned fruit, then how can we make that the best choice? Try to get the lower sugar ones, the lower sodium ones. So, but vegetables and fruits are important to maximize the quality of all of your food category choices. So, as far as fresh, making sure that we clean and store things so that the sooner we eat them, we maximize the nutrition in them. The longer fruit and vegetables and items sit in our fridge, they are losing nutrition as they age. Variety, eat a lot of variety. You know, breakfast may be the one meal in the morning, if you eat a morning breakfast, that can have less variety. I know it seems that that meal doesn't have as much variety as a lunch and dinner, but you know, make it a combination of raw food, cooked food. There are many different varieties, and there are people who love to be in the kitchen, and I have some friends that they love to cook. Their passion is to be in the kitchen. Now, I love to eat. I will cook, but it isn't where I feel I have my greatest passion. But I do feel pretty good when I come up with a dish. But for other people, they just love it. They're always creative in the kitchen. Water. Let's not complain about drinking water. Water is so critical. We're 80% water. We need to keep ourselves hydrated. Every cell in our body needs water. And the more that we can drink of water is important. Now, I get it that, you know, some water coming out of the tap has a bad taste or maybe too much chlorine. Well, we have ways that can be filtered, or you can put lemon or some fruit or berry in it to try to help give it that hint of flavor. As we go through the presentation, you'll understand about flavors and additives, but water is very important to drink as much as we can. Let's not forget about these health additives, spices, and nutraceuticals that are there. Your herbs, garlic, seeds like chia, flax, hemp. Those things are very powerful in our diet. They add flavor. They add in some super intense nutrient density that is so beneficial to us. And we are, even if you're using a few sprigs of rosemary or a basil, you are getting some great benefits from just doing that. All right, so there's a lot in the maximized category. There's a lot of food that's in there that we can enjoy using and eating, exploring, try some new things, get some new family favorites. So let's really think about what are you maximizing, and maybe there's a few, 3 items or so that you could be thinking, I think I can do that. I think I'm going to do that. So I hope that you can think about 3 things that maybe are going to become more choices. So in the moderate category, this is where we have the high fat whole food items. So olives are great. Nuts and seeds are nutrient packed. Avocado, coconut, these are all high fat, but they're high healthy fat. All of them have a lot of fiber. They have a lot of nutrients. They have a lot of phytochemicals in there. And yet we do need to be conscious that they are a high fat source, but we want people to eat them moderately. Some people are scared to eat them, you know, they're too high in calories. And then on the other hand, you know, you can sit down with that canister of cashews and on a commercial, and before you know it, you have half the canister gone. They go, but you realize, wow, did I ever eat a lot of nuts and calories? So let's be moderate with those. Sodium, salt. Sodium is one of the minerals in salt, but we have to be moderate with salt. It is, it does add flavor, and if you choose the pink Himalayan, the non-processed salt, you do get some additional minerals, but we need to be moderate. And of course, portion size, being moderate. One of our problems in North America and definitely in the US is that 1/3 of our population is basically obese, and we have another third that is overweight. And because we're eating too much of the wrong foods, then our weight keeps going up. Now, portion control gets to be a little easier when you're incorporating a lot of plant food, because the calorie density of plant food is much lower than it is of the processed animal-based food. So let's be conscious about portion size. So everything in moderation is terrible advice. I don't like that saying. I feel it, first off, my level of moderation or definition of it is different from every one of you. It's going to be different. So it's arbitrary, it's subjective, and really it does become giving yourself permission to eat or drink anything and everything anytime you want. And before we know it, if it starts with this much, it grows into bigger and more frequent. So I do want you to be very, very conscious of that saying, everything in moderation is good. Well, I'm like, no, there's things to maximize, things to moderate, minimize, and eliminate. So comforting lies will always attract the majority of people. It's hard to hear the inconvenient truth. So these whole fat, high fat, whole food items have fiber, chemicals. Phytosterols and stanols are super good heart protection. 1 to 2 ounces of nuts and seeds, plant omega-3s. So the seeds that have a lot of concentration of omega-3s are flax and chia, walnuts. Pumpkin seeds are great. Those are extremely beneficial, and we can get a lot of omega-3s from those. Omega-3s coming only from fish is that's one source of them. And in fact, did you know that fish don't even produce the omega-3? They eat it. They eat it from the plankton and the vegetation that they have in the ocean. They eat those omega-3s. They become concentrated in their flesh, and then we eat the fish. And we say, oh, they're so high in omega-3s, you need to eat your fish. Well, you can get omega-3s from plant sources on land, just like the fish find them in the ocean. So just be cautious and make sure they're fresh and good quality, not rancid, etc. Oh, I wanted to mention oils. That's what we need to be very cautious about, are liquid oils, because they are very concentrated calories. It's easy to have more, get it a little bit heavier on the oil than we need. And if we are conscious of that when we're cooking, then we keep our calorie density of our meals lower. Sodium and salt. Use real salt. If it's in a box, if it's white, it's been processed. Natural salt has about 88 minerals in it. Table salt in a Morton salt box has 2, sodium chloride. The companies strip all the other minerals out. They sell them to manufacturers and make a lot of money on those minerals, and we don't get the benefit of them in our diet. So if you're going to use salt, use real salt. Try to minimize the processed food. The more processed your food, the more salt and sodium are going to be in it. And I have found in my own cooking, when you use some of these stronger flavored seasonings, spices, and especially heat, I am a little partial to some spice. I like it medium so that my nose starts to run a little bit. That's when I have the right heat mix for me. I don't need as much salt. So maybe that can work for you. Portion control. How about attempting to make 75% of your plate plant food? So whether it be vegetables, fruits, or a whole grain, 100% whole grain starch, make 3/4 of your plate at least whole plant food. And other tips for portion control, smaller plates and bowls really do work. And eating slowly, this mindfulness has really come to the forefront, where you really are in tune with eating and cooking, cooking and preparing and being grateful. You know, say your prayer, say your grace before you eat it. Look at it, think about it, and appreciate it. And chew slowly and thoroughly. And before you know it, your feedback mechanism will help you be more moderate with what you eat. And we can do like the Japanese do. They walk away from their food when they feel 80% full, and they intentionally don't finish. I'm not saying they waste what they don't eat. I'm saying that they stop before they get 100% full. So make your plate full of fiber. Make your plate full of it. And if there's things that you want to reserve to continue to eat that are on the minimize area, then keep it to 1/4 of the plate, a very small portion, not the big portion. Break fast. Now, break fast is not a time of the day. It does not mean you have necessarily to get up at 6 o'clock and eat. Break fast is breaking your fast. When you sleep, you are fasting because we're not eating. And typically we are fasting maybe for 12 plus hours. And actually this overnight fasting is so beneficial for our bodies because it does increase insulin sensitivity. It gives our body, our digestive system, a rest. We get better sleep, and it is a key help with losing weight that would be necessary or helpful for us to lose. So snacks, I'm not a real big promoter of snacks. It really depends on the person and their situation, because typically the bigger the snacks, the bigger the slacks. We usually end up eating too much when we're snacking, and a lot of times we eat the wrong things that may be high sugar, high fat, they're low fiber, so they don't really fill us. So guess what? We go back and get more. So we need to avoid or limit snacks. If we have good meals that are full and satisfying and high in fiber, we really probably won't even find it necessary to need a snack. So keep those in mind. So again, we've come to the end of the moderate selections or items we talked about. So try to think about 3 ways that you would find easy for you to add these things. The really neat thing about the maximize and moderate list is I feel these are about additions into our food choices. These are, let's add these things. It's not about taking away. I would rather have you add these things first. Focus on the maximize and the moderate. addition of healthy items. And then as we go into the minimize and eliminate, when you add so many things, some of these things will be easier for you to minimize or eliminate. I hope that makes sense. So have a vision. We want to maximize and be moderate. We're going to set goals. We're going to crush and repeat. It's all about, doing things and redoing things that work. So we always have to keep some of this stuff as a goal, because every car, I use car analogies a lot. You can have a brand new car, and guess what you need to do around 5,000-6,000 miles? You need to take it in for an oil change. That just is necessary because the car is running for you regularly. Same with us. It seems like in my life, every 3 or 4 months, I need an oil change. I need to find something to reinvigorate me before I lose too much steam. And visioning, setting goals, thinking about what I want helps me have a form of an oil change. So I want you to understand that I'm not talking here about perfection. I am not perfect. I have a lot of good habits. We all do. But I have things that I struggle with also. And when you aim for perfection, like I've arrived, ta-da, I'm perfect, that is not realistic. It is not possible. You discover perfection. It is a moving target. It's called growth, development, maturity, strength, just being kind to ourselves as we go through our life journey, but always trying to look after ourselves and do the best things for ourselves. So it's a moving target. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So, I've given you a lot of good news, I think. I've told you there's lots of things to be maximizing, to be moderate, but now I guess I got to give you some of the tough news. So we're going to get into that here. But before I do that, I just want to say, I am not the food police. If you and I were to run into each other in a grocery store, I am not going to be judging you on what I see in your grocery cart or on your restaurant plate or what. I don't feel it's about judgment, and I don't believe in, the stick and criticism. It's about, trying to help each other, come alongside each other in a positive way. I also am not your food priest. A lot of times when people find out I'm a dietitian, they like to confess to me all of their problems in their diet. And I know we all have guilt from different things that we've read about this or been taught this, and I don't live up to it, so I'm guilty. But you know what? We have secret. Guess what? There's some ice cream in my freezer. Guess what? I have some chocolate in my house too. There are things that we enjoy. It's about the quantity and frequency. We're all a work in progress. Okay, I'm trying to stress this a lot because now we're going to go into some of the tough news. Now, why am I going to break this bad news to you, and why is it important? I do feel, again, people want the truth. And it can be stressful for people to give this information, let alone to hear it and think about what that means in my life. But because clinical outcomes are so important and we want people to have positive, healthy, full lives, it's important. And there can be ethical and legal imperatives. So that's my little intro to this. So let's talk about these items on the minimize list. So you have the handout, and we're going to go through each of these things. So, whoops, yeah. So here's the issue that we hope in this presentation you're going to get an interest and motivation to increase your vegetarian or vegan meals. I'm not trying to tell you you have to be vegetarian or you have to go vegan. But I am suggesting that you need to increase your plant food quantity greatly. Make sure it is growing and displacing any of the other processed foods and unhealthy standard American diet sad foods. So and we all know what animal products are. There's a lot of them. They are the only source of dietary cholesterol. Just like plant food is the only source of dietary fiber, well, animal foods are the only source of dietary cholesterol. So you won't get cholesterol at all in any animal product. They're totally cholesterol free. So if you try or want to decrease your animal products, it can be hard to go cold turkey. I'm not telling you you need to go cold turkey. I'm suggesting that you try progressive reduction and possibly elimination. You know, there are some times during the week when you aren't even realizing it that you may already be eating a vegetarian meal. And, you know, it didn't have meat in it. It may have had it might have had cheese or eggs possibly, or it may not have. But it is not unrealistic. It is so mainstream, so easy. All of the restaurants that you go into, they have gotten to the point where they realize there's so many people requesting this kind of food choice that restaurants are coming out with fabulous vegan, vegetarian options. And I'll just put a plug in for the Cheesecake Factory. I ate there recently in Portland with my sister, and we had their vegan Cobb salad. Their vegan salad is fabulous and totally satisfaction. And so there's lots of ideas for food choices. We aren't going to really get into, you know, recipes tonight. We can do some discussion about that next Tuesday. But there are a lot of online resources for meal ideas, recipe ideas. You can even consider if you have a family, maybe a meatless Monday, and getting your family involved in picking some of the items and helping prepare them. So minimize animal fat. It's full of saturated fat. It's full of the calories. And so anything we can do to minimize that helps reduce the fat intake from the unhealthy fat. So dietary fats and oils, we still want to limit those, but you want to make sure, I think these trans fats you need to become familiar with what they are and where they are found and avoid them. And I'll just, blow your mind. Cool Whip. Cool Whip is basically 100% trans fat. And when I found that out, I mean, when I was going through dietetics school, they really, I don't think, had gotten to the point where trans fats were prominent, because when I was in my bachelor's degree, using it periodically, but now I won't use Cool Whip. So I keep, basically in my house, I keep an extra virgin olive oil. I use avocado oil, which is a very high temperature, stable oil. I have some coconut oil, and I generally use the olive oil for cold food like salads. And you can use it in cooking if you're doing low temperature cooking. If you're getting your pan really hot, you don't want to use olive oil, because the smoke point is low and it'll break down the oil. That's where avocado oil and coconut oil are better for those high temp sautés. But I use chia seed. I love chia seed pudding. I love the flax seeds. There's some supplements that are super healthy. The borage oil, you can get vegetarian DHA, which is an essential omega-3 fatty acid from a vegetarian source. So we want to be cautious with oils, and make sure we choose the right type. And things like the trans fat oils are very dangerous for you. They contribute to a lot of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and hypertension. So please. All right, get real food. So limit mechanical and chemical processed food. You know, those foods are always going to be higher in calories because the carbohydrates are refined, the sugar is in there, high fructose corn syrup, they use trans fat. Those processed foods, food scientists are literally formulating them to have this super combination of fat, sugar, and salt so that they get this bliss point, this term bliss point, where they literally lead people to overconsumption and therefore continue to eat and buy because it is addiction. They've got artificial ingredients and additives, and they're low in fiber. And I love this saying, you can't expect to feel like $1,000,000 if you eat from the dollar menu. They're just not good for our health, not good. And there are things in this picture that I look at and I go, boy, at one time I was eating those. And as I've grown and matured and committed to try to make better choices, some of these things have dropped off our grocery list, and therefore they're not in the home and they're not being consumed. So we all can look at our pantries and our refrigerators and maybe evaluate what we have in there and which things, I only want to give up the things that are the easiest at first, because then I can probably be successful with maintaining that, and then build my mental strength for making the right choices and progress from there. So there are the three unhealthy white categories: the white menace, white rice, white flour, white sugar. These things really negatively affect our blood sugar and our hormone balance between insulin and all the other hormones. They are very inflammatory in the body. And when we consume them, our body does react in a way to almost, protect ourselves from them because they cause inflammation. So we want to very much limit these and avoid as much as possible. Sugar, I like the word garbage. It's so tasty, but it's so dangerous. And I really liked this graph because it shows that during war times, when things like sugar were hard to get, that the sugar consumption dropped, and also people weren't dying from some of the diseases that they had before the war, and things were actually getting better with their health until after the war, when sugar started back in the market and people started eating it and getting sick. So our consumption of sugar is high, and it's in processed food and packaged food where you don't realize or you may not assume it's there, but many times it is, and it's called different names. So there are healthy sweetener alternatives. Of course, raw honey. Honey is a natural sugar, and honey's good, but it needs to be limited. And if you have a blood sugar problem, if you are obese or overweight, then honey would be something you need to be cautious with. Stevia, I use some stevia products. If you overuse stevia, yeah, there can be an aftertaste. You just kind of have to figure out how to titrate it. So my little packet of the green Good Earth stevia, maybe I only use a few sprinkles. I don't use the whole thing, but I know you can figure that out. I've figured that out. Every so often, I have some maple syrup in my pantry and molasses, Molasses is actually a good source of some minerals, and old-fashioned people grew up using molasses on things like pancakes and oatmeal, because that was one of the sweeteners that they used frequently. I will want to note, or maybe it's coming up, I'll do that when I see it come up on a subsequent slide. Natural salt. Natural salt does have color. It is not white. It is colored. So the pink Himalayan salt is very easy to find these days, and pretty much I use that for everything. That's the only salt I carry. And I have a couple of the seasoning mixtures, and a couple of them have salt in them, but they have a lot of other seasoning. So depending on what that mixture is, I may have some of those mixtures in my spice cabinet, but generally, if I'm using salt, it's the pink Himalayan. Caffeine. This one's a challenge, because it's such a popular drink. It is a socially acceptable psychoactive drug. It does have a stimulating effect, the health benefits that it have are limited, but there are studies that show there are negative effects to caffeine consumption. It is a form of liquid stress to the body. It's like liquid cortisol. It increases your heart rate. It increases your adrenal glands pumping out the stress hormones. And those stress hormones have a great effect on the body if you're running away from a lion. But we're not running away from lions when we stop into Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts for our coffee, but yet we're putting our bodies through this liquid stress, and it has an effect. So there is definitely the potential of caffeine addiction. There definitely is a withdrawal symptom, and you can tell how much caffeine you're addicted to by how big your headache is if you stop drinking it or start to reduce it. And if you are going to stop, you need, I do recommend maybe work your way down, because that could save you from some pretty miserable doing. And of course, caffeine is not just coffee. It is tea or iced tea. It's sodas. It's in many different drinks. Now, I want you to be really cautious about avoiding liquid Satan. Liquid Satan is very tempting, is very tasty, and it exacerbates many of these drink habits. So what is liquid Satan? This is liquid Satan. You know those containers of French vanilla or hazelnut or whatever those coffee creamer concoctions that they come up with that sound tasty and tempting, and they're very tasty. But the ingredients in them are typically high sugar, partially hydrogenated oils or trans fats, high fructose corn syrup. Many of them have this, and you really need to be concerned, because anything that messes with our blood sugar we need to be cautious with. And of course, the partially hydrogenated oils in them are not, they're dangerous for us. So be careful of the caffeine and the liquid Satan. And how about frankenfood? Do we realize that there are a lot of GMO, genetically modified foods that are in our food chain now? And do we really know the impact? And corn is one of the most very, very broadly in the world is genetically modified. and more, some of these other things are as well. I used to use canola oil years ago, and then I researched it more and I felt, no, that's genetically modified. It's highly processed, more so than other oil, because there are chemicals in canola oil that have to be removed. Whereas mechanical processing of olive oil or others is different than chemical processing. So I dropped canola, but soy, you have to really look on labels and try to choose some of the foods that say non-GMO. High temp cooking, many times in the summer, a lot of us are seeing and knowing we have grills, we're out there grilling, and we do need to be cautious of over grilling with high temp, where we're burning things and charring things. The char on there is not harmless to the body. It contains chemicals that have been, when the fat is burned or the proteins are burned, it changes those into dangerous compounds, and they are harmful. So you can do other things. You can wrap things in foil. You could grill stuff in a pan that's covered where it doesn't have that direct flame on it. But keep in mind that the char can be unhealthy and dangerous for us. All right, so we've looked at that list. Maybe you can think, are there 3 ways or 3 items that you think you wouldn't have too difficult of a time choosing to reduce? So keep that in mind and mull that around. So eliminate. Yeah, I've put some things on the eliminate list and want you to consider my reasons why. So good cholesterol, which is your HDL, it raises your bad LDL cholesterol, which therefore is hardening arteries and cell walls, and it increases insulin resistance, which leads to obesity and diabetes type 2. So there is no good reason for us to be eating partially hydrogenated oils, and we need to hopefully become aware of which foods have them. And you don't need to make it too difficult. If it's fried, if it's been heavily processed, it probably, a good possibility it's got trans, and if it's cheap, it's going to have trans fat in it. Antibiotics and hormones. So antibiotics and hormones are used in the animal industry to keep them healthy so that they can gain the weight, so they can go to slaughter, so that they can increase the milk output and keep producing. And when you have all these antibiotics and hormones in these animals, it creates superbugs. Ends up changing our internal gut biome, which is in our GI tract. We have 100 trillion bugs in us that are part of our being and help us have health. Now, if you have a healthy biome, we're going to have a lot of healthy characteristics. If we have an unhealthy mixture of bugs, then we're going to have a lot of disease as well. So if you are going to consume animal products, I recommend to choose very carefully. Pay more for organic, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, and the punishment of paying more means it hopefully will encourage us to eat less or smaller portions. and use those smaller portions of meat or animal products in a larger recipe. Don't don't feel that you've got to eat a lot of meat or animal protein, because nutritionally you don't need a lot of protein. It's pretty easy to get your protein requirements and you can give this, but be very careful, because the antibiotics and hormones in the animal products have made the animal products very inflammatory for our bodies to eat. So did you know that 80% of all the antibiotics produced are used for industrial animal agriculture? 80%. That means 29 million at the time of this slide were being used and going into our meat, and the animal industry, the other 7 billion pounds are going into hospitals and doctors. So the majority of it in this country are going to animals, not humans. So here's just a funny, the wife telling the husband, I warned you about eating all of that dairy and yogurt, and he's growing some things on his belly and he's got a tail. Preservatives and additives, these are not healthy for us. We do not need food that can sit on the shelf for 3 and 4 years. For the most part, we typically have eaten it and used it before then. And typically preservatives are in processed food. Worst ingredients, here's these items. I will tell you Agave Nectar. When Agave Nectar first came out on the market, I thought, boy, this is great. It's a new form, it's natural, it's from a plant. And then the research started coming out about high fructose corn syrup. And what is high fructose corn syrup? Well, another sweet lie. It's a manufactured, highly processed sweet syrup made of fructose. And what it does, it's very dangerous for your health, because it creates it's the #1 cause of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and only your liver can metabolize fructose. No other, your muscles can't. So people who eat a lot of high fructose corn syrup are putting a lot of pressure on their liver. Artificial sugar substitutes are very, very unhealthy. They're actually listed as neurotoxins because they overexcite the neural cells and they burn them out. And so they damage our brain. Now, if we're worried about mental cognition and preventing memory problems and dementia, we could maybe start by reducing or switching the type of sugar substitutes that are being used into some of the other sweeteners that are better for us. So they have a taste that people like, but it can be a dangerous one. And I mean, I've seen people sometimes put 3 or 4 packets of some of these sugar substitutes in a drink, which they do have an effect on our brains. So soda is liquid bone dissolver. It is so acidic that the only way for your body to neutralize the acid in order for it to process it through the body is to take a base from our bones, and that's why sodas weaken our bones. Alcohol, it's a feel-good toxin. The government tells the truth, actually, because on their list of toxins, alcohol is listed on there. And alcohol has really, people may like the effect they've grown accustomed to, but it is unhealthy for the body. And there's no good health reason for a person to start drinking alcohol. And in fact, the more any alcohol or the more alcohol a person drinks, the more danger to their health. So the good news is just eat grapes. Enjoy the grapes. So alcohol poisoning, very interesting that the highest percent of alcohol poisoning is not in the kids. It's not even in those young adults who've just gotten into college or out of college. No, it's in the professional group, and that's a high percentage. So be careful with alcohol. So listen, our bodies are not a garbage disposal. We can't put whatever we want into our mouths and expect that there's no consequences for that. So we want you to have a better idea of what the choices are and how to make the healthiest choices so that we treat our bodies better. So where do you begin? I know you've gotten a lot of information. This has been an information session, more of a general information session. So where do you begin? It's pretty much one step. Think about what you want to change and then just start changing. Start with the easiest. Start with adding. Start with the things that are going to be more positive for you. And have a paradigm shift. We really need to change our thinking about our health and what we eat. And here's some thoughts. We really need to think about eating and drinking as a gift. It really is a sacred responsibility and sacred work if we are the temple of God, if we are caring for loved ones. The kitchen really is the heart of the home, and it supports the life of the home. And many times the kitchen can be the last place people want to be because it's perceived as work. Healthy food preparation and service as a gift of love versus work and drudgery. I can remember when I was working, there's times I'd come home, I was tired, I was exhausted, the kids were cranky, and now I got to make dinner, and it was so stressful. So I needed a paradigm shift and to look at how food and food preparation is not work and drudgery. And that healthy food preparation is a high calling and it's worthy of excellence. And it's a gift of love to yourself, to your family, to your friends. So God says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And He's given us all of this. And He wants us to know what to do, and He will help us do that. So here's a little quiz. You can take a quick look down here. Hopefully you are going to be continued to be interested in a whole food plant-based diet, that you recognize lifestyle, diet, and disease are linked, and that you are having some opportunity to think about what you are able to do within your diet and as far as choices. So I'm just going to ask Ida, were there any questions or do we have time? I've only got 2 minutes left. Okay, so right now, if you do have anything, we will look again to see if there's something that comes up that we can cover specifically from you in next week's session. And you will be getting an email with a program evaluation. We really appreciate if you would fill that out and answer some of the questions. We do plan to have more things coming in the future through online. As long as we're dealing with some of the restrictions there are with COVID, doing online things will happen. And when able and safe, we will be doing some things again in person here. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you want to communicate with us, here are our emails. And actually, my email is Sean L. Noseworthy. I just noticed the L is missing. So it needs to be Sean L. Noseworthy and then Ida and Travis. So please have a good evening. Thank you for joining us, and we will conclude our session now. So bye-bye.